episode number 4.
And let's shoot it.
Yeah. Today, I have Derek Swanson with me again. After we filmed the last episode, we had a good conversation, and we started thinking about ideas for this episode. And Derek's like, man, if you had me back on the podcast, we could talk about anxiety in college. Because if you haven't seen the last episode, you should definitely check it out. We talked about social media and the problems that social media addiction can cause. And one of the things was anxiety. So after we were done talking, we said, man, what if we just broaden the topic of anxiety and talk about anxiety in college? And Derek had some things that he wanted to talk about, so I'll give him the stage to start the podcast. He can tell you some of the ideas that were flowing through his head, as we ended the last podcast.
Absolutely, Ben. First off, anxiety's real, man. It's real, and
especially in
there.
college.
Yeah, it is big in college, and it is prevalent, and it is something that sticks with you. Even on days where it might not be bad, you might be able to get through and feel pretty okay. It's always just kind of there and lingering, and you have to find coping mechanisms to work with anxiety. Otherwise, it will just start to eat you. It'll eat at you, and it'll tear you down. And if you're not careful, man, it will overcome you if you aren't proactive about it. If you're not doing things to remedy the problems that it brings you. I mean, I'll start off I started dealing with anxiety back when I was about 15. I was a sophomore in high school, and I didn't even know it was happening at that time. You're just like, why am I freaking out about everything? What's going on? Why is life kind of starting to spiral a little bit? But after talking to people, you realize later on, I'm like, oh, this is what anxiety is. This is what it feels like. This is that feeling of just this weight on you, like on your chest, this heavy feeling that you can't breathe, that you don't know what's happening, you can't compose yourself, everything around you is just like spinning. It's almost, someone described it to me and I personally also agree with this, that it feels like anxiety, you're almost sitting above yourself, looking down at yourself, but looking at yourself super critically with everything. It's almost like you're removed from your own psyche, and you're just kind of like floating above everything. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me, the first time I really understood that I had anxiety was after my sophomore year of college. I came home and I was kind of feeling the same things that you're feeling. I was freaking out about everything. My mind was just a million miles an hour, just all different directions, just so wild. And so actually I had a buddy of mine who's like, hey, you should see a therapist. And I was like, man, come on, I don't need a therapist. What are you talking about? I kind of brushed it off. He was like, dude, honestly, you should see my therapist. Here's a card. And I went and saw the therapist, and I don't regret that decision at all. It's amazing what they can do. For me, I particularly had test anxiety. We came to realize, when I was taking tests, I was freaking out all the time. And so one thing I always do now, if you ever see my pens, I write with black pen, but then I take it's a clear G2 pen,
Okay.
and I put a piece of blue paper inside that wraps around the ink cartridge. And basically when I start to get test anxiety, I look at the blue paper and it reminds me of the ocean. It calms me down. It's a weird tactic to get your anxiety away. But that's a tactic that worked for me. And the only downside to it is I just don't know how much ink I have in my pen. But other than that,
Hey, man, I think what you're talking about is, this isn't exactly the specific term for it, but a grounder, something that keeps you grounded, something that you can reference and say okay, well, this has always been constant for me. Maybe everything else it might seem like it's spinning right now, but in reality, everything's kind of right as it used to be. I used to have just this little bracelet thing I would wear. I'd just play around with it when I'd get bored, but that would just kind of, every time I'd be feeling that, I would be like, okay, something I could just reference that it's normal. It's always there.
Yeah.
I was always wearing it at the time. I don't know. It might sound stupid to some people if you've never dealt with this kind of thing. It might even sound stupid if you have. But you just got to be kind of creative with anxiety and find things that work for you specifically, things that you can just hold on to keep that part of yourself alive.
Everyone's anxiety is different too.
Yeah.
Just because Derek and I have had certain experiences with anxiety, it doesn't mean your experience is going to be the same. Your experience can be totally different. So keep that in mind as well.
I have one form of anxiety, which is probably my toughest one to deal with. It's health anxiety. for the longest time it was called hypochondria, which you might even just still hear that thrown around like, oh, he's a hypochondriac. You
Yeah.
might not think it's anything. But no, this is a thing that people are truly researching into nowadays to put up with all the other generalized anxiety disorders. Where health anxiety is the idea that like you are always sick. You are either sick all the time or you are on the brink of getting sick, or a lot of it is like you blow small symptoms that have nothing to do with each other out of proportion. You might say like, you wake up, it's like, oh, well, my jaw's a little bit sore. Like, what's up with that? Why is that? And then it's like, well, is my jaw like aligned correctly, or like what's going on with that? Do I have like locked jaw? Am I freaking out about this for no reason? And then you freak out because you're freaking out about something for no reason.
Yeah.
Or you might have a cough that's like, oh, that cough's instantly lung cancer. You instantly jump to the worst possible things. Everything is
Yeah.
either, you know, you feel like you're terminally ill sometimes. It is absolutely worse. And this all stems from like general anxiety. It's just another way that your mind manifests it. And man, if you don't go after health anxiety, that will just start to decay you. And that's one of the hard things about it is you don't want to see a therapist too, because like sometimes you will be put off by the whole idea of doctors because they might either tell you something you don't want to hear, which is one really big part of it, or if you actually go to like a hospital. Obviously therapists aren't necessarily taught in hospitals, but if you
Yeah.
go to a hospital, you're worried about catching some other sort of disease. You know, your mind invents
Yeah.
all of these problems, and that's the main thing about anxiety, is that in so many cases, yeah, you might have real world conflicts going on, but your mind just amplifies those and invents way more problems than you ever need to be handling. And that's why anxiety sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a very, man, you got very deep and personal there. I think
Yeah.
the viewers will
I'm holding
definitely.
nothing back today. Nothing is held back.
Yeah, I think the viewers definitely are going to respect that out of you, Derek. Man, that was inspirational. I mean, just like you can overcome anything, particularly like with anxiety. I mean, there's also like social life anxiety, which is like another thing too. There are people that super introverts, and they are scared that if they go outside and they socialize too much, something's going to happen, or
Yeah, and then the flip side, you have separation anxiety. People
Yeah.
who just crave social interaction constantly, and then when they're left to their own, that's when their mind really starts to wander. That would be kind of a little bit more what I deal with. Or if I'm by myself for too long, I start to get a little bit stir crazy within my own head, and that's not fun for anybody.
no. I mean, life's all about balance, right?
Mhm.
So you have to balance, like, especially in college, since we're talking about college students, you have to balance like
Oh yeah.
your academics, your social life, your athletic activities if you're athletic at all, athletic, I guess, / leisure activities, like what you like to do for fun. That's not hanging out with your friends, and I mean, especially in college, it's really hard because most college kids have been sheltered their whole life by their parents, and you get to college and it's this whole new world. You're away from mom and dad, and you have the opportunity to try new things, and it's like, oh, well, I never was able to even try this in high school because my parents, like, oh, you need to be back by 10:30,
You're left to think on your own.
Right, and so you're naturally, you might struggle with balancing all those things together, particularly early in college. At least that's how I felt anyway. I mean, I'm sure some of you probably felt the same. Derek is, now,
Yeah.
you're in your third year, so.
I am a junior now. I'm 20 years old, and it was a lot worse last year. I'll be honest with you. I've learned a lot of ways to kind of cope, and part of that is just like keeping myself super busy, so that I don't necessarily give my mind as much time to wander and think about things that aren't benefiting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've tried to fill my time as much as I can with things that are benefiting me, that I know are like going to play out right now and be helpful, and then in the long run too. And then that has calmed me down personally. Obviously everybody is going to have their own way of dealing with these problems. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's not, my way is not universal. It might not work for anybody else besides me, but it has worked for me, and it's worked through me through talking to other people about this kind of thing, through finding coping mechanisms that work for me. If you want to go see a therapist, absolutely go see a therapist. Have somebody that you can talk to consistently that is going to give you these tips to, start working on your life.
Yeah, I definitely think it. I've said this a couple of times in this episode, but I really, really do think it's more prevalent in your freshman and sophomore year of college, and you start to figure it out by like your junior and senior year of college. I know, especially like end of freshman year and beginning of sophomore year, I was, man, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if I can manage like all these different things, and I have anxiety, and all this stuff's going on. It's like, just take a step back and just be like, take a deep breath. Like, you can do this. Like, you can get through it, but you have to address it. I think that's one thing Derek and I'll tell you a lot is you have to address it if you do have that sort of problem. And there are a lot of kids that come to college that don't have anxiety.
No.
They're not
God
going to face
bless them.
that anxiety. yeah, God bless them. Not Derek or I, but more power to you if you don't.
Yeah,
So-
and the worst thing that you can do with any sort of anxiety is just act like it isn't there. Just repress it. You just keep shoving it down. It might go away temporarily, and then you think, oh, I'm good now. But then it'll sneak back on you and hit you full force.
Yeah,
You're only doing yourself a disservice if you don't actively work to deal with something like this in the right now.
Yeah, you can only push it away for so long until the point where you're going to have a breakdown. So there's balance there. Derek wrote a great article about the legalization of marijuana in the newspaper and how that can have.
That's correct.
There are health benefits that he stressed about in the newspaper.
Obviously, I'm not trying to plug my own work right now or anything of that nature, and I'm not advocating for any sort of one way. I'm just letting people know that whether it be marijuana or whether it be some sort of prescribed medication or whether it just be talk therapy, talking to a therapist, actually having these meaningful interactions with people that are helping you to balance your own life and work some of these problems out. I mean, anything that you can find that works for you, go about it in legitimate ways, obviously. Go about it the correct route, but do it. Just the main thing is just do something, And I feel for anybody who is struggling with anxiety right now, who just doesn't know what their next step should be. Somebody who's lost and saying that, I don't know what to do, I feel like I'm just kind of in a rut. Well, that rut is only digging deeper if you stay in it longer. So, first step that you try to make to actually make progress for yourself is say, I'm going to do something about this. I'm sick of waking up and feeling this way. That first step is crucial. You're already on the right path if you're thinking that way. And then the more steps that you take after that, the more help that you get, the more that you help yourself too. Whether it be, you need some sort of medication, you need a professional therapist. These are all steps to get you back on track, get to feeling yourself. At the end of the day, that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think I couldn't have ended the podcast any better than that. Ultimately, if you do have anxiety in college, the ultimate goal is to end the anxiety in college, and whether you have test anxiety, social life anxiety, academic anxiety, OCD, whatever it is, whether you have any of those, the ultimate goal is to try and neutralize that or eliminate that as much as possible so that you can academically achieve the excellence that obviously you're meant to achieve in college. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me
Being
again.
very, very personal today, very, very out there, which is really good for all the viewers, because I think they're going to appreciate that, respect that, and they're going to take something away from not only my personal experience, but really your personal experience too. So they have something to go off of going forward.
That is the ultimate goal here, man, and really just not, by saying something like this, we're not trying to undermine anybody else's struggle. Obviously, everybody's struggle is legitimate. I think anybody dealing with anxiety, regardless of however it manifests for you, it's legitimate, and we hear you, and all we're doing right now is just encouraging you to take the necessary steps to remedy that, and then ultimately just get back to feeling like yourself.
100%.
Thank you again, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate you
Thanks for
having
joining me, Derek, on the last 2 episodes, and you also made an appearance on the first one. So we appreciate you joining in. And, that's going to wrap up, this semester of podcasts. So thanks everyone for watching and tuning in, and thanks to Derek and Andrew who helped out creating these podcasts over this semester. It's been a heck of a ride.
Thanks for checking out
All right,
our
guys.
podcast.
Thanks for checking out the podcast. Have a good one.